Reformed Church.
All right, well, you know what? I will share just a little something with you. It was just something that I was thinking about in respect to loving others. You know, I think, you know, and I say this because of even sometimes a lack of consciousness that I even have in my life when it comes to loving people, that sometimes when you think about loving others, I think a lot of times maybe the things that might resonate in our mind might be kindness towards other people, or maybe, I don't know, I think that's a very prevalent thing, just being kind towards others, but I think there seems to be sometimes a thinking higher of ourselves than we ought to think in respect to loving others, right? Like, in other words, when it comes to, raising the dead, we may, feel our need for the Lord, right? Like, yeah, you can't just do that. You have to make sure, that you're being conscious of the Lord, that you're acknowledging every good thing that is in you in Christ. But when it comes to just loving others, there's a capability that we feel, an ability that we feel to just do that. And if you want, if that ability, if that sense that you have is because of your faith in Jesus, and the ability that you have is of the Spirit of God, in other words, if what you sense in your life is the fruitfulness of God as you are dealing with people, then that's great, right? That you acknowledge the Lord in loving other people, in whether it be someone asking you to pray for them because they're sick, they don't feel well, whether it be someone asking you to someone that you see that needs financial help, someone that needs to hear the gospel, whatever it is, just in our day-to-day loving people and dealing with people, right? That I just wanted to make sure that, or just maybe just to remind us of the need that there is to acknowledge the Lord in all of our ways, right? That we don't have this thing almost kind of like we know how to be kind, and that you can see other people and you're not being kind, but I know how to be kind, because it's just that it's kind of like that self-awareness of what you think your own ability is to do, that what it is to be kind to someone and you're not being kind. But there were many times that you can read in Scripture about, well, and you know what, let me share this with you. I was kind of thinking on the way here about how Jesus said that he had entered into a town and he could do no mighty works there, right? And essentially in the works that the Lord does and that he was doing towards people was because of their faith that they put in who he was, right, and what he had come to do, and that he had come from the Father, that because they refused to believe who he was, that he couldn't really manifest the love of the Father to them in the way that he wanted to. And if you think about this just from the point of view of Jesus Christ, like the Lord entering into a town and just interacting with people, like how do we think that would go with people that refuse to believe who he was and what he came to do for them, whether it be in general or whether it be in just one conversation that he was having with them, versus people that he would deal with that did believe, right, what he came to do, and did believe what he was, that he had come from the Father and what he was coming to do on the earth. So, it just, I think sometimes we believe that we understand what it means to love other people. Like we have this preconceived idea sometimes that if you love someone, you treat them like this, or if you love someone, you'll speak to them like this, or if you love someone, you'll treat them like this. But in reality, you know what? Because I don't have the ability to truly, really love someone in and of myself, and that I need of the Spirit of God to be able to do any of those things, including, right, in other words, like, here, I'll read just something to you that, should be pretty basic, but in Colossians chapter 1 and verse number 9, he says, "For this cause we also, since the day that we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to desire that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God," right? Like we can love one another, right? In in proportion, right, to the knowledge of Christ that we have. Like, it's loving others is not like this thing that we have increased ability to do above all the other things that we need the Spirit of God to do, right? But all of the things that we are doing, right, we need to do and walk by the Spirit of God in order to do those things, right? But not have a preconceived idea of what loving someone is. It's kind of like praying for the Lord for His will to be done, through you in the life of somebody else in any respect, right? But when it comes to loving somebody, kind of like, it's okay. I got this figured out. When you love somebody, you're going to love them like this, or you're going to speak to them like this, or you're going to do this like this, right? But it's the acknowledgement of every good thing that is in us in respect to anything that we're doing, including loving one another, including our dealings with other people, so that we can do those things. We can do those things in a righteous manner, so that we can do them according to the way the Lord wants things done, so that we can say things, not say things to people because we believe that that's what they want to hear in order to see a smile on their face, right? Not to say things to people in order so that they can feel comfortable with us, right? But to say things to people according to what the Spirit of God desires to speak and say to somebody, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Like, you may have a sense that if you say what you have in your mind to say to someone, it's going to make them uncomfortable, but we can't be people that think like that, right? We can't be people that are hesitating to do things because this has to do with relationship, and I don't want to either hurt someone's feelings, or I don't want to say this, or I don't want to say that, right? But just allow it to be the acknowledging of the Lord in every single thing that we do, regardless of what it is, right? We, just as much as we would pray in order for, if we were gonna, we wanted the Lord to work in any way in our lives, and we consider the Lord, and we, put Him in our heart, and we allow Him to be the one to do things in our lives, and we want things to be done by His power. So it is the same thing in loving one another, right? It's no different. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse number 7, it says that the manifestation of the Spirit, in other words, the Spirit of God working in and through us, Him manifesting Himself, is given unto us, right? Is given to every man to profit withal. In other words, to profit everyone. And sometimes the things that will profit someone may be, something that is very much accepted by them, something that you would say or share or do to someone's life that is very well received, right? Someone being healed of a problem with their ankle, right? And being healed immediately, that's something that people welcome very much, right? But sometimes speaking the gospel that is what enabled that work of power to come from you then is not so easily received, right? But it's from the same source, and it's to accomplish the same thing, which is life to be imparted to someone, right? In that same verse, but the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal, right? To profit everyone. For to one is given the Spirit of to one is given by the Spirit, the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, and to another the gifts of healing by the same Spirit. So just as much as we rely on the Spirit of God for gifts of healing, for faith, for a word of knowledge, for a word of wisdom, so it is the same thing for love being manifest from inside of us, right? It is all the same thing, right? We can't think that we have a preconceived idea. This is what speaking in tongues sounds like. And then we're just going to do that because we think that that's what speaking in tongues sounds like. So since I know how to do it, I'm just going to do it like I know that 2 + 2 = 4, right? But we don't, you don't just exercise things and do them because of what's in, your carnal understanding, right? But the things that are done because of the faith that we have in Jesus Christ, right? Everything stems from the same faith. In 2 Corinthians 9:8, right? It says, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you. God is able to make all grace abound toward you, and that is even in regards to loving someone, right? It is by the grace of God in us, in other words, by that which we have received, which we didn't merit and we didn't work for. It is from that grace that you're loving other people, right? It's not from the top of your head that you love people. It's not because you think you know how to do it. It's not because that person has loved you, quote unquote, a certain way, so you're going to respond in kind to them, right? The way that the things that you say to people, so many times Jesus was said something by someone, and he responded in a completely different way. Sometimes he would speak openly to people, and sometimes he would speak to them in parables. Like, there's so many different things that the Lord did, and the things that he did as the Spirit of God worked in and through him. It wasn't just some kind of a response to what they were getting from somebody, right? Anybody can do that. Anybody in the world can love those who love them, right? That's a simple thing to do. But just as much as you may find it difficult in and of yourself to love someone that hates you, and you need the Spirit of God for that, so just because somebody happens to love you and is showing you kindness in some way, right? It's just this thinking that we have loving others under control. We got that. We know how to do it. We've been loving our mom and dad since we were little kids, right? And we know how to love people, right? That's not something that people in and of themselves know how to do and that do well. People stink at loving other people, right? They stink at it, right? And we are no good at it either, right? Before we had Christ in us, right, we could love no one in the right way. Right? We could love people as long as they were responding to us in a certain way, and the minute they cross us, we would start feeling differently towards them, right? Loving people is no different than raising the dead. It's the same thing. We need to acknowledge the Lord on the inside of us for the same purpose. So it says, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, having all sufficiency in all things, you may abound to every good work. Loving others, we need that to come from the abundance that we have on the inside of us, and it needs to abound and be manifest from the inside, not from up here, right? It needs to abound from the inside of us. It needs to be something that comes by the power of God, by the Spirit of God, and by the Spirit of God, we do have, and we know, all sufficiency from these things. So if you acknowledge the Lord and what you're doing, right, you acknowledge that needs to come from the Lord, and you're acknowledging the love that you have in you, that you are one of the most loving people that exist, right? Among non-Christians, I guess you would be the most loving person there. Among Christians, you would be just as loving as they are, right? But it's a consciousness of Christ and not a consciousness of my own ability, right? That way, when I see someone that I don't believe is loving others in a way, then what we're looking for is a consciousness of Christ in the mind of that person towards the things that they're communicating to somebody else, and not are they treating them in a nice way, not are they speaking to them in a way that doesn't offend them. But so even in your judgment of how another person is treating somebody else, what you're looking for is slightly different, right? In that you're looking for the discernment to be able to understand and judge a situation correctly, not by whether or not a person is feeling uncomfortable or a person is feeling comfortable, but the discernment from the Spirit of God to know that was said is correct, or that which was said is not correct because it's not according to Christ, not according to something that the Spirit of God would do either, right? In Romans chapter 12, and we'll stop here, Romans chapter 12 and verse number 6, it says, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith. It says, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering. Or he that teaches on teaching, or he that exhorts on exhortation. And he that gives, let him do with simplicity or liberality. He that rules with diligence, and he that shows mercy with cheerfulness. So even in your giving, right? Even in your giving to other people, right? Even the giving should be by the Spirit of God, right? Not that we just, well, because I have money, I'm just going to buy and I'm just going to give, or I'm just going to give you money, or I'm just going to give you financial help, or I'm just going to do whatever it is, right? Because that's just, it's an interesting thing that even in our giving, sometimes we feel like, well, we can do that as long as we have money to do it. You could just give and do whatever you want, right? But instead of seeing that even our giving, right, even our giving with liberality is by the Spirit of God, right? That these things are given, it's according to the grace that is given to us. That's where these things come from, right? According to the power of God that we have in us by the Spirit of God. Giving is done by the Spirit. Exhortation is done by the Spirit. So we see that teaching, right? We would say, yeah, teaching needs to be by the Spirit of God, and exhortation needs to be by the Spirit of God. But he said giving, right? Even giving that's done, it says with simplicity or liberality, I believe a good translation there is, right? That when you give and you give liberally to someone, That should be, again, by the Spirit of God. That, some people may say, to love somebody is to help them or to give to them, right? But even that, do we feel just capable in and of ourselves just to do it because we feel like doing it? Or is it because we have acknowledged the Spirit of God in us, we have acknowledged every good thing in us, and then we feel, we're empowered by God to do what we're doing, empowered by God to say what we're saying, right? I think it's a good reminder. It's something, I'll tell you this, when it comes to, even if you kind of back off the loving others for a second as far as using that word, but even in showing kindness to people, there's not a ton of times that I can recall in my life, so I'm just speaking of myself, right? A ton of times in my life that I would say, I'm dealing with people day in and day out, right? And even in the way that I treat them, even in the way that I speak to them, I should be acknowledging the Lord so that it's not just me saying and being kind to someone because of the reaction that I want to receive from them or because of the openness that I want them to have, right? You want people to accept you so that you would have an in to be able to say something to them, right? Because you want people to smile at you because then you feel that you would have an opportunity to share the gospel with them. But the thing is, both of the things that you're attempting to do need to be done by the Spirit of God. One is not done by you, and then the Spirit of God kicks into fifth gear after you've gotten them to smile and laugh. Now you get to preach by the Spirit of God, right? But the acknowledgement of every good thing in you comes in the kindness, it comes in the faith, it comes in the healing, it comes in the teaching, it comes in the exhortation, it comes in the giving, it comes in all of those things. It's not just one of them, right? But it's all of those things. So that in the acknowledging of every good thing in us, we would see, like, you know what, Lord, for me to attempt to say, that I kind of have this and not even acknowledge you because I feel this ability to just do this on my own, right? That we know that that's something that the Lord needs to teach us and needs to develop in our hearts and understanding that, without the Lord, I can't do this or this or this, right?
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.